So now here we are, pottery, and a few more reflections from the baskets for you. This event happened many years ago. I wish I had a date on it. It was back when there was another couple professors here in the anthropology department, and this was a talk given basically in art. Where were we? Were we in Slade? Oh yeah, look at that. We were over and this was done by the art people. So me and another professor ended up going to this talk. Anthropologists are often out of place in these art worlds, and it was a great talk. And it was also about how she was trying to get some of these pieces back out of museums where the archaeologists had put them and into the community again so they could work from these pieces. But at the end of the talk, an anthropologist who is not me and is not here anymore raised their hand and asked a question about this pottery thing. What do you think that question was? The classic anthropological question. If an anthropologist raises their hand when they see one of these pottery things, what do you think they ask always? I knew this person was going to ask it. That's why I sat far away so I wouldn't be associated with him. What's the classic anthropological question? No, that's the classic art collector question. Is that for sale? That's the classic rich question. Can I buy that? Is that for sale? Yeah, no, anthropologists rarely can buy it. They might barter something for it or ask to take it for a while.
I was wondering, how did you get this?
Where did it come from? Yeah, there's a bit of how was it made here. That's a little bit. Anthropologists do like to know how it's made, but there's a particular thing we want to know about those little graphics on there. Yeah, basically, it's like the question was, where did you get your designs? Where did the design come from? And the reason I say that that's a classic anthropology question is because what are we looking for? We're looking for culture, tradition, design. And the idea is that somehow the design is passed on or is coming from the life of the mind and is then put upon this object. And so the design comes from your mind and you put it into the object. And our potter, Charley, looked at the anthropologist, and it was as if Ingold had inhabited her body all of a sudden. It was just from the time that I first started teaching Ingold, and if I knew, and what did she say to my professor?
Ingold did it at one convention?
Let me put it to you this way. If that pot was blank, let's say you've just been handed a pot, there's nothing on it, and you're about to paint it. What do you think she says she does first? What's the first thing she does when you're about to paint this thing? Find where to start. And what do you think you start with? No, that's the design part. Remember, that's like, I'm looking for my culture. I'm now about to impose it upon. She said, I draw a line. That's exactly what she said. I draw a line and it all comes out from there.
For this style of design, though.
Well, sure. I know, but it was like amazing. It was like Ingold himself had said that. You draw the line and then it emerges from there all over the place. You don't have a mind in it emerges in the doing.
Okay. Well, I'm arguing this right now.
I thought you'd like that because you said before that you liked that basket wait a second, maybe it wasn't you. It's not a problem that contains its own solution. There's not a solution to this problem before it happens. The solution comes out in the drawing of it itself. It's like weaving a basket. And sure, there are other designs where you maybe, I don't know if you're drawing the face of one of those, I don't know, a face on there, you might have something to work off of. I grant you that, but this is amazing. I draw a line. I know, look at that. It's like you build off of it.
Drawing technique than like a psychological thing.
Well, that's exactly right, though. That's the thing, is the anthropologist was looking for the thing, the culture that was going to give it to you, but it's like, No, it's in the drawing itself. It is exactly right. Why we're arguing. Let me show you something. I show this in intro now when I'm discussing stone tools. So just to be clear here, though, what our scientists say, I love this too. But our scientists say that when we find something, we don't know. Was it intentionally made by humans, or was it unintentionally made by monkeys or capuchin monkeys? But there's two more possibilities if you just combine those. Intentionally made by the monkeys. Why can't the monkeys have intention? And unintentionally made by humans. Maybe we want to lick some dust. Who knows? It's like, so what I'm saying here is, we just need to watch this again.
Stone to eat the.
Just art digging up spiders.
He's doing a thing.
Some just like to bang stones together because they like the sound of it.
Are they making music? Is this music with the earth?
Oh, music with the earth. That's good. I like it.
Who's to say what the monkey's thinking?
Exactly. Who is to say? And who's to say what the human's thinking or not? They might just be drawing a line.
Oh.
So, insulting monkeys. This actually always asks dumb questions, but so people have been bugging me for the purpose of Ingold and how to apply to archaeology. So this is what I came up with. Ingold is very applicable to cultural anthropology. I would have benefited very much from being able to ask better questions, like not like, how did you get that designed, but just like, hey, what are you doing? How do you do that? But in archaeology, who cares if it was made by a monkey or a person or something like that? I would say, and things are getting better in all of our disciplines, but people have spent their whole careers, decades, trying to sort out, was this made by a human? Was this not made by a human? When did the first tool come in? When was the first fire? And the point is to learn from the whole in context. It is just a different archaeological site if it has monkeys bashing things together with humans bashing things. Maybe they learn from each other. Who knows? We can learn from the whole in context. And this is from the basket class, but I'm drawing a quote from Silas here. One of the things is like looking just as much as the stuff that doesn't preserve as the stuff that did preserve. And so when we're looking at an archaeological site, we get all into stone tools and flakes because that's what's there. But we also should, I thought it was a fun idea, like if we could have the new fiber age and the old fiber age in the middle, because of that stuff preserved. So again, I'm not trying to criticize anyone here. I'm just saying that it helps us, I believe, to ask better questions. And instead of looking all the time for culture or design or text or intentionality, in the case of the monkeys, we appreciate, or humans, we appreciate process. We're one creature among many doing our human thing. We're playing our part in the world. And so this has gotten better, but and in terms of looking preserve that what is not there, well, let me get to the next point. And then that also a lot of times we, both in cultural anthropology and certainly in archaeology, we try to figure out, like, does this belong to these people? And how did it get here? And when does one group begin and one group end? And we should just recognize that people are interconnected and intertwined with each other. And we borrow and invent things and trade them around all the time. And people have gotten a lot better about all these questions, but there are still places in the world where they will dig through the first 10 feet of stuff because they're like, that doesn't matter. That was these new people that we don't care about. We want to get to the authentic stuff that's below. And so this helps us to ask better questions about our anthropology, and I would venture our archaeology as well. We're all getting better at this, but just out there. Now, this was at the end of the basketry chapter, and we didn't have enough time to answer this, but several of you commented on these passages. Can we imagine a society in which young and old, currently excluded from the tasks of world making, are once again enabled to work alongside one another in forging the conditions of collective life, young and old. Can we break the barriers of their institutional segregation, allowing them to regather in the quotidian, everyday settings in which these tasks are typically carried on? Now, so what did you remember what the most people would think about this? That the idea that young and old are going to get together? Well, you guys quoted Ingold saying that for most people, this would be manifestly absurd. This was ridiculous. What are you talking about? The demented and the ignorant getting together to do things? That's no way. It's ridiculous. It's manifestly absurd. And Tiana, you had some worries about the practicalities of this and the wider scale implications, which we talked about a little bit. And other people had problems with this too. So can we do this? Well, anyway, let me just put that out there. Is this a good idea? Should we do it? Could we do it? Simi wanted the kids running around the church or something. She thought that was a good idea. The old and the young getting together.
It's good.
It's good. For me, I'm a little bit fixated on this because I'm old and I feel like, well, I don't know. I feel like you're passing out of ignorance. You're now entering the generation that's supposed to be my generation and the one that's gonna make things and do things and look at me as demented and the younger children as ignorant with their iPhones staring at them. So yeah, I feel like you're right on the cusp. And so yes, I do believe this is my last chance. This is my last chance with you all to try and teach you these things. And so for me, do I want to be the professor who gave you the knowledge of anthropology and a bunch of stuff and a bunch of dead artifacts and where everything was put in? Or I don't want to be the one who gave you wisdom, stuff for life. That's what I like the most about Ingold. It's not like I don't get information. I get tips on raising a child and walking along. It's worked out. Well, I'll grant you that. Does he have to use quotidian? Why not just use every day? He's one of the more down of all the philosophers you might meet. You'd have to say he's the most down to earth of those. For me, I want to give you wisdom for life. I want to give you all those fortune cookie things, but not so that when you meet your elders, your demented elders, you'll sit down with them and take their wisdom. Or when you're with children, I'm not going to recommend having children of your own, but when you're with the little children, that you'll be able to listen to them and talk to them. And so for me, I would rather have you hate this book and then be annoyed with it. I'd rather you have the burning fire of hate for this than just be annoyed with a guy who stood up there and gave you a bunch of information. And I say that as someone, so in the old days, we should bring these back. In the old days, we had written course evaluations. And they had a little sheet that you filled out and they had 5 questions. And I went back and I looked at some of them because there's some that are memorable. You just never forget them. This one I did forget. But when I look back, we have to bring back these written evaluations because you get to express yourself. Most people, you're not doing these online ones. Nobody's doing them. Nobody cares. If this was typed out, it wouldn't make any sense to me, but to get that in your hand and look at it, it's different. Now, most students, when I look back, because I thought more students did them, most students didn't do this part, they just left it. And most students said the same thing. This was a very common thing, lecture and discussion, because the books were so confusing. So that was common. And then what could I have done to improve my learning? And it was always read, come to class, read more. I should have paid attention. But some of these I will never forget because they were written.
Like a super pro Ingold class, just like the.
I
feel a little like.
No, I am honestly I'm surprised at the amount of pro Ingold I've had over the years. Like this is the anti, obviously. And this dude was, by the way, the other thing is like if you have them in written form, you can sort them out. I could obviously tell who this was. Super smart person. No, I'm surprised that over the years, like I recently got this message from a student who wanted like a reference letter, and it had been a long time. I was like, okay, where did I know this student from? I looked up and she'd been in the class where I assigned Ingold, and I started to feel really bad about it. And I'm like, oh, sorry for putting you through that. You're so brave. And she's like, no, it was hard. I was shocked by it. So maybe over the years it'll change. I don't know. Who knows? But I'd rather have you respond like this. I'd rather have people throwing their books across the room than just like, anyway. In this class, I wanted to start off with this tweet. I found this recently, and it seemed to express what this chapter is about, oddly enough. And so this person said, I was talked to this tech guy, and he was like thinking about how there's no way to know if your experiences of the world are the same as other people. I might write about it. And then this guy is like, hey, philosophers have been talking about this for thousands of years. And so for those of you who think Ingold is excessively wordy, remember we're getting like a thumbnail sketch of like hundreds or even thousands of years of philosophy. So this is the essence of it. How do you know if your experiences of the world are the same as other people's? So then this guy said, this is a few years ago, he had started a handful of startups and he literally thought he had personally discovered wondering about other minds. I told him about solipsism. I forget what that is in philosophy, but you're all on your same head. He started frowning and walked away with his watery scotch. He was so sad when he discovered that he had not personally invented thinking about how we know things. Well, remember when we were talking, this also wraps back to the last class. Remember, Tyler, when we were talking about psychological creativity and historical creativity? Yeah. And so like this guy had a thought. He's like, people experience the world in different ways. And that is actually a not world historical thought because people have been thinking about it for thousands of years. Now, Ingold says that you can't really check the historical record. That's absurd. But every so often you might want to just glance at it. Like you might want to just see if anybody's had an idea like that. And this was one of those occasions where you might want to glance back and discover that, oh yeah, people have been thinking about this for a long time. So the title of this chapter is Landscapes of Perception, Landscapes of Imagination. Well, let's start off with what's so great about this painting? Yeah, there's that whole section where Ingold's like, you take the easel off. Is there a tree? Isn't there a tree? What does that mean? Yeah. Why does Magritte say this is the human condition? Why does he claim that about his painting? That's a big claim. I have just painted the human condition.
Yay!
Yay! Everything is a big mess. Our brain creates a pattern and that's how we interpret it. Or you can never know what is reality. It's all in our heads. Basically, it's all in our heads. We can never really know what's out there. It's all in our heads. And that all seeing is imagining. When we see something, we're just creating an image of it in our head. And so perception means we are taking our mental images and putting them onto the chaos or the formless matter that is in the world. And it is specifically culture, our memories, our traditions, which gives us the designs. Oh my gosh, we're back to that pottery, to make sense of the chaos. So when we're looking out into the world, we don't actually see the world, we see our design in it. And so it's only a landscape at all, and certainly a beautiful one because of what we think it is. Yeah, that's just, nature is just nature, but we're the ones who make it into a landscape. No, you should probably be talked into this. This is probably what we teach people. This is pretty standard anthropological stuff. the idea that it is our culture which shapes our perception of the world, nature, all that stuff. Is pretty much that. Landscape and Memory was a historian person. That was his magnum opus, that it's the culture that gives the design. So you should be talked into this. It's not bad. A lot of smart people believe this. Probably might teach it sometimes. Actually, Magritte is more famous for this painting. This is his most famous. How do you know this is not a pipe? You don't know that because Magritte wrote there in French, this is not a pipe. So there are multiple interpretations of this. It's great. It is cool. So Magritte was very into this world of illusion, but what he's trying to draw our attention to is, well, there was a reason I was asking Tiana this, is how do you know what you're seeing? What do these people say? Yeah, it's like, well, I don't know if it's a pipe or not. I had to have somebody write it out there in French below to figure out that it wasn't a pipe, because, whoa, it might be a pipe. It is weird. And so the idea, the people that get really into this, and it is super interesting, it is fascinating. Like, it's the idea that we never really know. We'll never know if this is a pipe or not. All that we do is guesswork. Every time we see, it's a hypothesis about what's out there. It's a guess. And what we do is we try to prove or falsify the hypothesis. And that's what we do as we perceive. So our perception is just a hypothesis about reality. Magritte had to tell me that this is not a pipe. Otherwise, I might have thought it was a pipe. Started smoking it. Ingold here draws on, or the people who do this are drawing on, a very famous idea by Karl Popper about the way that science progresses and proceeds. Actually, this was not as Instagrammable as I thought I hoped it would be. But Popper was basically saying that science progresses because it falsifies hypotheses. And the philosophy of science here is that we often think that science proves hypotheses. It's the opposite. We can never prove a hypothesis. We can only falsify a hypothesis and then hopefully come up with hypotheses that are closer to the truth. But you can't ever definitively prove a hypothesis. So it has to be falsifiable. And this also will explain, I hope, why science is so frustrating to a normal person. Because as a normal person, you go through the world and you want to know, hey, what should I eat, eggs or not? And science one day will be like, yeah, go for it. Eggs are good for you. And then the next day they're like, nah, we figured out that that was based on a flawed hypothesis. Don't eat the eggs. And then they're back to eating eggs. So for most people, they're like, science, they never know what's going on. They're always changing their mind. But in part, it's a function of how science proceeds, which is to try and falsify hypotheses more than actually prove one. And it has to do with this idea from Popper. Now, however, would we ever really be fooled by Magritte's painting? Would we ever think, oh my God, I was about to put tobacco in there and take a puff? You would never think that. Well, you quoted the fact that Ingold says that unless we are artificially fooled into this, unless somehow that is projected onto our minds as like it looks like a pipe in 3D, we're never actually fooled by this, because we just go up and like touch the painting or take it off the easel. Like, we're never actually fooled by these illusions, which brings us to a second perspective, which is no. It is real. Like, the things that we see are real. They're out there. They're not just illusions. And I'm stealing this line. Were any of you raised on Mater's Tall Tales? Does that ring a bell?
Cars?
Yeah, Cars. That Cars spinoff where he's going off on Tokyo and all that stuff. And then he was like talking to Lightning McQueen and it's like, don't you remember? You was there too. And the whole like, it is real? You don't know this? Anyway, we should talk like Mater more. Anyway, the point of this side of things, which is most personified by the psychologist James Gibson and his ecological approach to visual perception, is that it's not about mental processing, that the reality is there. And if you are perceptive, if you're a perceptive person or animal or bugs or anything crawling along, percepting that we move around in an environment and look or feel, and we are picking up what he calls invariants in an environment. So when I'm going along and I run into something, I haven't just run into a mental image of a desk. I've run into a desk, man. Here it is. It's here. To me,
It's like,
yeah, no, but that's the problem. Who knows? It could be I'm in the matrix and I just feel it and I don't know. I don't know. I'll never know. I'm back in Magritte's world. But to me, I feel like I've run into a desk and I can't get through it. Just feels like I've run into something that is invariant.
like the atom and the
Oh,
0.0000000 chance.
oh, that I'm gonna just go through this because I've walked through.
The atoms, I don't know, it's stupid.
Yeah, no, okay, so if that, watch Buckaroo Banzai and the seventh dimension, that's about how you can go through solid objects as long as you've done a phase shift. Wait, honestly, has no one seen Buckaroo Banzai? I might have to just show it to you all. Okay, now I understand not knowing Karl Popper, but Buckaroo Banzai, that's classic. I feel like your education needs some updating. Absolutely agree. And almost at almost any point, like Ingold, when he seems the most anti-science, says, no, this is like trying to make science better. It's trying to give us that sense of like, why are we doing this? Hold the both thought, because we're coming up on the both. We're still on one side of this. We had the it's all in your heads people. Now we're in the it is real people. How do we know that something is real? How do I know that this doesn't seem real? How do you know? There's nothing real in this classroom. Okay. Well, we can't scrutinize each other. How do we know if something is real, Mickey? What else can you do if you took a magnifying glass to your notebook there? Yeah. You can, yeah. So Gibson says the test is if you keep going and you keep scrutinizing, it doesn't reveal more, whereas an image just is there. It won't reveal more. But a tree root or your notebook or anything like that. And that's why he says, Gibson says, we're not fooled by paintings because you can touch the painting and be like, it's a painting. You scrutinize it and you could actually look into the painting and see a brushstroke or something. So you can have more of the painting image revealed. Now, just to be clear here, back in the old days, Ingold was like, and Gibson really, he drew on Gibson so much. Yeah, they were buds. Or Ingold did something for a little more than friends, yeah. And well, there were a couple reasons of this, which you might be able to guess already. Tiana, why would Ingold like, not Gibson, but this idea of perception? What do we have to do as we're perceiving things?
Factors to consider, like go in our perception.
What do I have to do to perceive?
I'm scared. Walk.
But the idea is that perception, you're not just sitting back receiving images, you're engaged in it. It's the product of something that is moving through the world, it's embodied. You're not just sitting there collecting images in your head. The perception is very active and moving and embodied. And so that's what Gibson was about, is these creatures moving through the world, picking up these invariants. And so for Ingold, this really helped because it meant that perceiving wasn't separate from being in the environment. It was being directly engaged in the environment. And it wasn't just human beings who did that. All creatures who have their own perceptive systems are able to do this. And so it's rejecting all sorts of dualisms, which Ingold was trying to get beyond the dualism of culture over nature or mind-body, or human, non-human, human animal, that Gibson in some ways helped Ingold go past what was the standard view at the time, which is that our perception is just images apart from reality. And so is very useful, and you can tell that Ingold here is a bit wistful that he has to break with Gibson because they were buds back in the day. But what can Gibson not give us here? Yeah, Gibson, he can't deal with imagination because the thing is for Gibson, who cares if you have a dream or if you have a memory or you imagine something, that's not perceiving it. And so imagination for Gibson is when you're a perceptive system, but you've shut off perception, you've disengaged from the world or decoupled from it so you can let your imagination roam free. Because if you're actually perceiving things or you're actually engaged in the world, then you're going to be picking up invariants. You're not just going to be imagining things. And so Ingold wants to like Gibson and wants to bring him in, but he's pretty clear here that he believes Gibson's view is profoundly mistaken. That he can't, this idea that you can't do, or that imagination has nothing to do with perception is profoundly mistaken. And instead, he wants to do what Silas says, both. My contention is that perceiving is imagining, but not necessarily in the sense of just coming up with images outside of reality, but basically going deeper into reality. Thanks, Simi. I'm pretty sure you quoted this, which is crucial here, because it's not just that imagining isn't just constructing images or fantasies in the head, but to participate from within through perception and action in the very becoming of things. And so we imagine and perceive at the same time. So basically, what he says was Gibson's mistake, of how he was mistaken, is that Gibson and others in this vein, we're just picking on Gibson because he's representative of this, saw the world, the perceiver is the one moving through the world. The perceiver is the one engaged with the world, but the world is these what he calls invariances, things that the perceiver picks up. Whereas Ingold wants us to believe in, as we've seen before, a world that is more in flux. And so if the world is also in flux, then we can join imagination and perception together, because although this feels invariant to me, it is, over time, it is actually quite variant. It is coming into being with and around the perceiver. And so it helps us to look, perhaps, or Ingold says, at art in a different way. Liv's new favorite artist. Yeah, you are quoting from close to Paul Klee. But the idea here is that art is not just trying to reproduce the visual, rather it makes visible. This is on page 36, one of Paul Klee's most famous works from 1932. Yeah. No, it's using the pointillist technique and geometric forms. It's not trying to fool us into thinking we're seeing a mountain or something.
I see it now.
Yeah, I see a house too. It's to reveal something that isn't there. I forgot why this is your favorite. Because of the artist. Well, it was just after he says art is not to
It's not like imagine anything.
to grow things, that art is a process of growing things. Yeah. The pot.
Yeah, I was agreeing.
So it's a different way of thinking about art and life. So just to recap here, because you had a question about these two worlds. So the reason that I call these the two worlds people is you have some people like Magritte and Shama, maybe most anthropologists, who believe that humans basically live in the world of the mind or the world of imagination, maybe Levi-Strauss too. And we can't ever really perceive the world. There's a world of us in our heads, but the world of the real is guesswork. It's a hypothesis which we're continually trying to prove or disprove. So that's one sort of people who are the two worlds people, that's Magritte and his human condition, right? We live in this world of imagination. We can't escape from it. And there is a real world, but we never know what it really is. And then there's the Gibson people, or the it is real people, or Mater, who would say, no, this is the real world, and imagination is something we do when we aren't perceiving. And so in both of these instances, although they are far apart, both of them see humans as basically trapped in one world or the other, or alternating between those worlds. Whereas for Ingold, he wants to believe, or he wants to say that humans occupy this middle place where both of these things are going on, and that what we have is both imagination and perception in a rhythmic alternation. So it's not that they're opposed to each other, it's that we're doing one thing and the other at the same time. And I thought this was illustrated. So Ingold asks, are humans the only creatures that imagine? We know other creatures are alive, but are we the only ones that do this thing of imagining the world?
I don't know.
Other mammals dream.
They do dream. Didn't we confirm that? Didn't we put that the stamp on that?
They do, yeah. What Ingold says is they might. We really don't know. When you say this, that's what he says too. Like, we can't ask them. And there are some shamans who believe they can become them, but we can't really know. I don't know. I'm gonna pass on that one for a second. Yeah. So Ingold says we can't really know if these other creatures are imagining, but he says we can observe the way they move and the way we move. Humans move in a peculiar way. Perhaps other animals imagine too, but metamorphosing into non-human kinds, as shamans are alleged to do, it is hard to ascertain what it might mean to imagine like a bear, a whale, or an eagle. They probably do it, but we can't access their imaginations. We can, however, ascertain from observations how other creatures move, and notice that of all creatures, human beings move in a manifestly peculiar way, namely by walking on 2 feet. Now here's where you're gonna kill me. Leaning into the step while lifting one foot, you place yourself at imminent risk of falling forward into the void, only to restore your postural equilibrium as the foot comes temporarily to rest. So that every time we do this, we're imagining and then perception. You're not as much of a risk. You have a couple limbs on the ground. I don't know. It's a wacky idea, but it's cute too. Mickey's other new favorite artist, Richard Long, walking the line. What's Richard Long up to here, Mickey? What's he do? What's his art?
Takes photographs and landscapes that he walks across in straight lines sometimes.
Yeah, most of the time he's going straight across. This doesn't look as straight, but yeah, he goes through various landscapes and he walks through them. That's one part. He did make that line.
And then take a picture.
And then he photographed.
That's more than footsteps.
Is he ruining this land?
Well,
Grass?
so one part of the art is the walking. So he'll be like walking off into the distance, and then the other part of it is this photography book that he sells. And so, well, Silas, you said that Ingold got down on photography, but Ingold is not down on photography, but he's down, what he doesn't like about this is that he thinks the art is that process, not the end picture. And so he thinks Robert Long's art, the most important point is that he's walked this line, and that the picture is what you use to represent it. And so photography is fine. It's just that he feels like the photography is not actually capturing the art. But then he talked to Richard Long at a conference and he's like, what is it? What's going on? And Richard Long's like, no, the photography is just as important as my walking. And Ingold's like, and so Ingold says, okay, fine, because who's going to be able to go out and watch this? And so he says, well, fine. On the one hand, Long wants his art to be accessible. And so, yeah, that you could say that this photography book is more accessible. He does take a little bit of a dig at Long when he says it's like bait to feed the market in fine art. I don't know, but look at that. This is what the market demands, are these pretty books. And Amazon will sell me all these books. They're beautiful. Ingold says they're beautiful. Yeah. He does say it's beautiful. What he said, what bothers him is that the photography seems to cover up the art process, which Long also thinks is important to him. And I don't think Ingold loves that thermal painting. It's not like he doesn't like it. And he loves lots of photography and lots of painting and things. But in this case, he feels like, well, the photography is covering up the actual process of the art, which is for him more important. But he'll give it to him. Somehow this made sense to me when I put it here. I have to go back in time. So we get to this point, and then I'm backing up a little bit, because Ingold says that many people want to predict the future. They want to imagine a future state, or the government or people will imagine all these scenarios. What's life going to be like in 2050? And then they want us to take steps to get there. And so what Ingold is saying is that instead of predicting the future, what is most important or valuable is the gift of prophecy or foresight, being able to see into that future, not to predict it. And that the people who have that are opening paths into the world, places to follow, not trying to settle on a fixed endpoint. And so what he's advocating for here, and this is fortune cookie stuff, so this is to give us this sense of that life is lived in this adventure, so walking out into the world. Less literally, adventure implies an exposure to that which is about to happen, a risky endeavor at the best of times. And it is surely in this, in placing one's very being at risk, that we find the crux of what it means to be alive in a world that also sees, E-T-H-E-S, with vitality. And so I do want this Richard Long book. This looks so cool. I would like this for my coffee table, the many rivers to cross, because it is about having that, being able to cross things and having that sense of adventure. That'd be beautiful.
Did he make that little circle?
Did he make that circle? Don't know. Well, I don't know. Nobody's bought me this book yet, so I can see, and then I can look on the cover and I can see if he made the circle. So again, in some ways, when you do get to the end of Ingold, you're like, well, that's just common sense. That's just, but you had to fight through a bunch of weird academics and philosophers to get there. And you want to engage with that, not dismiss it. Yeah.